Thanks, Hillary. It's good. It's nice.
Okay, which one now?
Don't lose hearts. My capo as well.
Oops.
Thought that might start summoning people up. We'll just keep playing louder with every song and more people will come, right? Yeah. Okay, don't lose heart.
Yep.
All right, okay, let's do it.
Test.
I've been lost before. I've taken a few too many left turns.
I've been full of doubt, self-hatred, that old familiar wheel churns. I'm looking for a sign, a guide to give me hope, something to tell me which way to go. And yet we do not lose heart, outwardly we waste away. Inwardly we're renewed day by day, and yet we do not lose heart, outwardly we waste away. Inwardly we're renewed day by day. Looking for a sign, a guide to give me hope, someone to tell me keep on going. And yet we do not lose heart, outwardly we waste away. Inwardly we're renewed day by day, and yet we do not lose heart, outwardly we waste away. Inwardly we're renewed day by day. Renewed day by day.
God is our strength and ever-present help in trouble. God is our strength and ever-present help in trouble.
God is our strength and ever-present help. God is our heart and ever-present help in away. Inwardly we're renewed day by day, and yet we do not lose heart and ever-present help we waste away. Inwardly we're renewed day by day, and yet we do not lose heart. Outwardly we waste away.
sun and the moon, like horses driven by kings. You cover the mountains, the valleys below, with the breadth of your mighty wings. All treasures of wisdom and things to be known are hidden inside your hand. In this fortunate turn of events, you ask me to be your friend. You ask me to be your friend. And you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past. Yeah, you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past.
The constellations are swimming inside the breadth of your desire. Where could I run? Where could I hide from your heart's jealous fire? Treasures of wisdom and things to be known are hidden inside your hand. And in this fortunate turn of events, you ask me to be your friend. You ask me to be your friend. Oh, and you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past. And you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past. You are the beginning and the end. 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 Oh, 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 oh.
Come on, hands up.
Oh,
Thanks. Welcome back from lunch. Over to the worship team.
Is my mic live? Is my mic live? Hello, everybody. And welcome to Friday afternoon worship. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So exciting. I am Kim Holmes Younger, and this is Nancy Chagas, and we are going to lead you in Friday afternoon worship. Whoop, whoop. It's not on? Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Perfect. Nancy will start with the call to worship.
Come to the banqueting table, all you who follow Jesus. Come find your place at the table. Might your language, lens, and lived faith be ecclesial? How is the Spirit animating your life of faith? In worship, let us find out through the grace of God.
Please join me in prayer. Gracious and loving God, gathered because your love has been poured out to our hearts through the Holy Spirit. As a community of your faith-filled people, we boast not in our own accomplishments, but in your grace, which binds us together. We boast not of our own successes, but in our hope of sharing in your glory, generation by generation, rooted and grounded in the good news of Jesus. Amen.
Our scripture reading is from Romans chapter 5, verses 1 to 5. Therefore, since we are justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have obtained access to this grace in which we stand, and we boast in our hope of sharing the glory of God. And not only that, but we also boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint us. Because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. Wisdom for the journey.
So a few summers ago, I took a pulpit supply job for a church in Kelowna. And each Sunday, they started off by sharing where they saw God's work in the world that week. So I'll ask you now, where did you see God's work in the world this week? Is this an easy question to answer? With all the distractions in the world, it is hard to see God. However, when we slow down, we see signs all around us: new life, renewal, kindness, unconditional love, and so much more. And I think now more than ever, our world needs to see the signs. And the longer I live, the more and more I experience, and the more I realize how necessary these signs are. They're what keeps me going. They renew my faith, and they give me hope. So throughout the Bible, we see the scriptures littered with God's promises,
Promises like God's love has been poured out into our heart to the Holy Spirit. Promises of eternal life. Promises of unconditional love. And the list goes on and on. And these promises, these signs that God is working in the world give us hope. And oh, I have so much hope. I have hope that the church, the Christian church, is not dying. Why? Because Jesus did not stay dead. He rose, and that miracle that changed the world over 2,000 years ago is still changing the world today. And if time hasn't killed Christianity, then nothing will. And I have hope in the United Church because they even let divorced people here. And I have hope that the sick and the dying and the suffering will be healed. Why? Because I have seen peace wrap its loving arms around people and give them hope, give them strength. And whether it's physical or spiritual healing, it doesn't matter because they are so filled with love that is so powerful, they are no longer suffering. And I have hope that the opioid crisis will end. Why? Because other countries have figured this out. I just read an article a few months ago about Portugal, and in 2001, Portugal took a radical step and became the first country in the world to decriminalize the consumption of drugs, and the drug-induced death rate has plummeted to 5 times lower than any other country in Europe and 1/15 of the United States. And I even have hope that this damn pandemic will end. I know we're not out of the woods, but it will end. And this hope is not some crazy optimistic thinking. It's not my dream or my wish. This hope is real. It comes from our scriptures. It comes from our saints, our mystics, our theologians, but mostly it comes from God. Do I always have hope? No. It takes insight, it takes spiritual practice, and it takes community. Hope is not an individual gift, it's a collective gift. It wasn't just one person who spread the gospel, it was millions. It wasn't just one person who ends a war, it's thousands. Collectively, people work together to find hope in the midst of darkness to move forward. And when the disciples saw their beloved teacher hung on the cross and put in the tomb, did they scatter? No, they gathered together and prayed, and they found hope in community. So baptism is another example of hope. And Pope Francis said, Christians are not exempt from darkness. They do not live outside the world, but through the grace of Christ received in baptism, they are men and women who are oriented. They do not believe in darkness, but in the brightness of day. They do not succumb to the night, but hope in the dawn. They are not defeated by death, but are yearning to rise again. They are not bent down by evil because they trust always in the infinite possibilities of goodness. And this is our Christian hope. So when I remind you, or the children remind you of your baptism in just a few minutes, I will ask you to find hope in knowing we have chosen to be a part of a community of faith. We have chosen to be raised as followers of Christ. And with this comes great responsibility, not only to spread the good news of Christ, but also to spread hope. And remember, this is not some kind of crazy optimism, enthusiasm, but spiritual hope. that gives you a little bit of light to go out into this world to make a difference. So as you go out into the world after this conference, I'll ask you to pay attention. Watch for God's work within this world. And I guarantee you that you will see God's promises sprouting all around you. You will see signs of hope to share with the world, and that hope will bring a little extra light into this dark world. Amen. House.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong. One, we claim the faith of Jesus. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where love is found in water, wine, and mead. A banquet hall on holy ground, where peace and justice meet. Here the love of God through Jesus is revealed in time and space. As we share in Christ the peace that frees us. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where all are named, where songs and visions heard, and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word. Built of years and cries and laughter, prayers of faith and songs of grace. Let this house proclaim
we're going to do a small renewal of our baptism. So if you could join me in these words, and afterwards, gently and lovingly with water. I think the words should be on the screen in a second. Oh, wait for the words. There we go. As baptized and baptizing community, I invite you to answer these questions of faith. Desiring the freedom of new life in Christ, do you turn away from the forces of evil and renounce their powers? Do you turn to Jesus Christ and accept them as your Savior and Lord? Do you commit yourself to the mission and ministry of Christ's church? As a baptized and baptizing church, do you commit yourself to support and nurture each other within a community which worships God, resists evil, and seeks justice? May this be a great reminder of your baptism. I'll ask you to stand as you're able for the blessing. Please join me. As a baptized and baptizing community, we are the body of Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit. We commit ourselves to pursuing justice, living gently on this earth, and learning and growing our faith. For to this we are called. Amen.
As the children head for their program, I invite our guest from General Counsel, Ellen Hall, who is the Executive Officer of Ministry and Employment.
Good afternoon. It is good to be with you. And I just want to say, do you like my jacket?
Yes.
Thanks. I had to brush more dust off this jacket than you can possibly imagine. It's been in the closet for 2 years plus, and I've not had an excuse until now to get it out. So thank you for giving me an excuse. It is good to be with you. Bring you greetings from the General Secretary. The moderator finally got his act together and brought you greetings last night. But on behalf of the General Secretary and the staff of the General Council Office, it is good to be here. It's good to feel the spirit in this room. It's comfortable and laid back and solidly grounded in the faith of who we are. So thank you for letting me experience some of that and be part of it. I have only an hour this afternoon, so I saved the late-breaking good news for the end so that Taylor doesn't cut me off. But a couple things I want to quickly speak to. The General Council strategic plan that some of you may be familiar with, and others, this will be an introduction. Office of Vocation, which is one of the responsibilities that I have. And as I said, late-breaking good news. But I want to start with what is regrettably on all of our minds, and that is pandemic. Pandemic fatigue. I think it has bitten all of us like a malaria virus. It is just there. 25 months, who could have imagined more than 2 years and still counting of a global pandemic that would affect every part, every aspect of our lives? It's been an arduous time, especially for those of us who have lost loved ones to the virus, and those of us who have had COVID and now bear the long-haul effects. In our congregational and pastoral lives, well-established patterns, practices, and habits have been turned on end. That might be a good thing, but very few of us ever welcome that happening, and especially all of them at one time. We're all tired about pivoting, or as Trina wrote, recalculating. But that's what we've had to do, isn't it, every time. So I attend this beautiful recital at the church I attend in Toronto on Friday at noon. And it's immediately before Christmas Eve. And so they're listing all the Christmas Eve services. And by the time I got home that night, what is in my mailbox but an email saying, all those services we just announced this afternoon canceled. Pivoting, recalculating. To you who are congregational leaders, thank you. Thank you for your tireless efforts to find new ways to worship, care, and serve, and to keep the doors open, even when they had to be closed. To ministry personnel, to my colleagues, thank you. You have brought remarkable leadership to this time. You've brought a readiness to figure out yet another technical skill that you never thought or dreamed you would have to know. You've brought compassion for bridging the barriers of locked downs to reach out and care for those in your communities of faith and in your communities. It's taken a toll. It's taken a huge toll. For some of us, that toll has perhaps forged some new resilience, even if also with it exhaustion. For some of us, the toll has worn more thin what was already thin, leaving us feeling frayed and torn. My hope for you in these coming days is that this crisis is ended, but even if this is but a lull in what we don't know is yet to come, may you have time in the coming weeks and months, particularly over the summer, to find some time, take some space to breathe, to recover something of your body and soul, and to find some satisfaction as you look back at the good, faithful service over these last 25 months through this arduous and unpredictable time. Many of you will be familiar with Diana Butler Bass. She's an American historian of Christianity and an advocate for progressive Christianity. She wrote a while ago about being asked what the future of the church is, or if there is even a future for the church after the pandemic. And she was wise to say, I don't predict futures. But she did, however, point to the etymology of the word religion. It originates, she said, with the Latin religare, which is commonly defined as an obligation to a particular order of things like doctrine, polity, moral action, or in the United Church we call it the way we've always done it. The pandemic has laid waste to the way we've always done it and anything that's fixed or ordered. It's also made it obvious that there is no going back to what we think it was, or the way it was, or the way it was ordered. So by this definition, religion is in for a hard time post-pandemic. It will be suffering the long-haul consequences. Diana goes on to the other meaning of religare, which is to bind or to reconnect. I often talk about, in preaching, remembering, putting the pieces back together. She calls it reconnecting. Religare is about mending what has been broken, recovering what has been mislaid, and reconnecting that which is frayed, she writes. This says to me that we have much good work, much faithful work to do. Work that the church is skilled at. Work that the world needs. Work that I think resonates with what we in the United Church have said for a long time is a call to the persistent, insistent, healing, life-restoring work of God. We are placed where the world needs us to be right now. Thank God for that. To declare that the human condition is not contagion, that relationship is at the core of our humanity, and that relationship with all our relations is a sacred, holy, divine imperative. I'm not as inclined to such language as Sam is so adept at, but I would dare to say that this is an Easter call to resurrection, and we're ready for it. I grew up with that 1968 declaration that we are not alone. And I got hooked into the vocation of ministry by those statements: we believe, we trust in God, and we are called to be the church. A new creed continues to resonate for me as the clearest, freshest, and crispest statement of who we are and who the United Church of Canada is called to be. Last fall, the recalled 43rd General Council, who here was a commissioner in the 43rd? Several of you? Great. Last fall, the recalled 43rd General Council adopted 6 new words that are resonating with me with the same clarity and crispness as a new creed: deep spirituality, bold discipleship, and daring justice. Alan, would you run that clip?
The major statements made by the United Church of Canada over the last number of years.
We live in a world that is largely individualistic, and when I think of discipleship, I think of commitment to God, commitment to a life following Christ, but also commitment to one another.
It's really about how we're working to live and do our ministry together as this United Church of Canada.
We have to dare to love. We have to dare to dream of a world in which love reigns. And I think this is the ultimate test for modern Christians.
Whether it's Men in the World, Justice Seeking, Justice Living Church, Towards 2025, It's found in our Song of Faith and in the New Creed.
Ceux-ci sont les piliers de qu'est-ce que ça veut dire d'être l'Église de l'avenir. C'est sur cette base que nous pourrions être capables de répondre à l'appel de Dieu.
These words,
Deep spirituality,
bold discipleship,
daring justice,
is an expression of who we are as the United Church of Canada.
this is our call. Let's make it our commitment.
These words are who we are. They are who we are at our best, and these words are who we can be and live into. These 6 words declare who at our best we are. The General Council Office, we're really working very hard right now to look at everything that is on our desks and part of the agendas of our work plans to focus and tune on these 6 words, and to look at where the gaps are in helping us as a denomination move forward and live into this vision. As we live into this plan, it's an opportunity for all of us in the church, as regional councils and as communities of faith, to consider how we too can embrace a deep and abiding spirituality, practice bold discipleship, and engage in daring justice for the good of all relations. Maybe that our congregation won't do all of those things, but maybe there's one of them we'll focus on. Maybe we are missional, maybe we are spirit, maybe we'll pick up one of those themes that we're talking about this weekend and run with it in the spirit of this vision and mission. 2019. 2 of the largest and most significant changes brought about the reform of our denomination as a result of remits passed by you, by the vast majority of our pastoral charges and presbyteries. One of the biggest of those changes was the introduction of an office of vocation. And you're saying, what? I know, it doesn't seem to matter much or touch the lives of most of our congregations. But it's a phenomenal change in who we have been. In effect, it split the traditional episcopate, that role of bishop that we don't talk about, but was lodged in the presbytery since 1925. It split it between the regional councils and this new office of vocation. So care and oversight of pastoral relations and the health, joy, and excellence of the practice of vocational ministry were all entrusted to the regional councils. The determination of readiness and suitability for paid accountable vocational ministry, the oversight and discipline of ministry personnel, and the nurture and development of vocation were entrusted with the office of vocation. Now, I will say most of the last 4 years of the triennium has been focused on the office. Getting the policies up, the processes, the handbooks, orienting to new means of doing the work, and doing the work with about 150 elected and appointed members rather than 1,500 elected and appointed members scattered across 86 presbyteries and 12 conferences and a circle. It's been a learning exercise for everyone, and pretty much everyone has at one time or another stopped, scratched their heads and said, we haven't done it this way before. Processes have been tweaked, policies adjusted, practices learned, and we've gone along. Learned as we've gone along. The next triennium that we're going into, the focus will be more on vocation, enriching and enhancing vocation, articulating vocation in our profiles that name and claim our practice of ministry. Seeing continuing education and sabbaticals as vital to further enhancing our skills for ministry and strengthening vocational commitment. Seeing the vocation of ministry through the lens of discipleship. It's going to be exciting. This is the heart of what we dreamed about for a decade or more in an office of vocation. I thank Brenda Fox. Where's Brenda? There she is. thank Brenda for her leadership these last 4 years in this regional council as one of the vocation ministers. We'll hear from her tomorrow, I believe. And Janet Gear is also one of our coordinating staff for ministry vocations and central to all of this work with candidacy boards and admissions. So thank you, Janet, for your role and your contribution. Karen Medland, back there. Have any of you met Karen before? She's so quiet, and okay, well, she's quiet, so you'll just have to watch for her. Karen's been serving as vocation minister in the mountain regions, or the prairie regions, so Prairie to Pine, Living Skies, and Northern Spirit. I'm kind of finding it hard this afternoon to do the last thank you, and that's to Trina and you guys, because you've pinched her from the office and bringing her here into the role of Regional Council Pastoral Relations Minister. But thank you, Karen, for your contribution to the Office of Vocation in the last 4 years.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, and I like Trina for what reason? So some late breaking news before the microphone is cut off. It was just announced yesterday that to date, members of the United Church of Canada have contributed $750,000 to support the people affected by the war in Ukraine. Thank you. And 2021 mission and service results are in this week. It's with immense gratitude that I say the generosity of the United Church of Canada, we have recognized an increase in mission and service support in 2021. I think that's the first time in over 2 decades. In 2021, communities of faith, UCWs, families, and individuals gave a total of $20.2 million, up $600,000 over 2020, for our shared denominational work in both Canada and abroad. Remarkable. Thank you. And the last piece of good news from, again, my portfolio as the senior staff person for the pension fund. I'm delighted to announce that a shareholder proposal that we, as a pension fund of the United Church of Canada, took to the annual meeting of Constellation Software, which you've never heard of, but it is actually a leading provider of software and services to public and private sector markets. It's a very influential and consequential digital profile out there. We took a shareholder proposal urging the company to improve its diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. And it responded with a strong objection to the proposal, saying that their unique corporate structure prevented them from doing what other companies were doing, and they were actually doing really very fine. Thank you very much. The Board of Constellation counseled shareholders to vote against it. And at the meeting on Wednesday, shareholders said, no, we disagree with you. We agree with this proposal, and so a large majority of the shareholders voted for our proposal, and now the board will have to report on the company's plans to identify, address, mitigate, and dismantle the inherent racial disparities within its workforce. Oh, wow. Yeah. Seldom does a shareholder proposal pass at an annual meeting. And this is the second one we've had. Another was a shareholder proposal to Encana, a company you would know well, in terms of disclosure of its activities on Indigenous lands and engagement with Indigenous communities. And again, against the opposition of management and the board, our proposal passed. It's been a good week to be United Church. Again, I thank you. I thank you for the invitation to be here, and I thank you for your hospitality and your friendship, and I thank you for your faithfulness in this place at this time. Amen.
Friends, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, and Alan just agreed to answer a question or two if you happen to have one for him. There's a mic at the center of the room. I'm springing this on Alan So does
The last time this happened at a regional council meeting, I had to have an escort away from the microphone.
That sounds fun. I know, why are you doing this? Oh.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? Going twice. Oh, John Pentland.
Okay. It's not really, well, I guess it's a question. So what's the mood in two places? One in national office, what's the mood there? And how do you speak about the mood of the United Church across the country?
The mood in the General Council office, some folks are feeling still extreme anxiety about the state of this time, and that of course impacts how they engage and how they work. Another aspect of the mood of the General Council office, I think, is an incredible engagement with the work and the ministries of this denomination. We have had an opportunity as a General Council staff to engage with almost on a, well, literally on a daily basis with you and people in all of the regional councils in a way we've not before. Yeah, we would come to regional council meetings and you would come to meetings in Toronto, and that would happen 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. But now on a daily basis, we're engaged with the whole of the church. And that feels like a significant ground change in orienting what we do and reminding us every time why we do it and with whom we do it. So that is a real good result coming out of this time. I'd say another piece that is good around the mood at General Council is that as we look at a hybrid model of returning to the office where some folks will have to be present to do their jobs because they can't really be done effectively and efficiently from their kitchen table. But 40% of our staff we've identified as flexible, working from home most of the time, but have to be available on a periodic, regular basis to come into the office. But 40% of our staff we've designated as remote. And that means a good 60 or so positions can now draw upon the skill and resource and experience of people across the country who are not expected to relocate to Toronto or locate in Toronto. And that opens a pool of expertise for the roles, and again, the richness of bringing in the distinctiveness of each regional council's experience and faithfulness. So that is good. What is the mood of the United Church of Canada? Well, you know, Cynthia Gunn, one of our in-house lawyers who's retiring this year, always said when she'd be asked a question, who's asking the question? And I think you would get different answers from different people. I know some folks, particularly ministry personnel, are afraid to the end, and their experience is that nothing good has come of this time or will come of this time. Others are exhausted, but are invigorated by how congregations have risen to the challenge and broken through the barriers of the way we've always done it, and are excited to be moving forward and what might be, what can be, and what will be. So it's a mixed feeling. I think, you know, General Council, we're seeing a bit of brittleness amongst commissioners, but we're also seeing an attentiveness to detail and information and question. And I think that bodes well for moving into the discussion phases that are coming up. So thank you, John.
Hi, Alan. Dave Pollard. Thanks so much for being here. Given the fact that price of gas is just this morning in the big smoke hovering around $2 a liter, given the fact that average housing prices are upwards between $600,000 and $750,000 across the country, given the fact that many ordered ministry folk have seen cuts in effect to benefits plans, and those of us who are in the practice of ministry and called into ministry have not done this to get rich but to serve. But man, is it hard to serve when you're making choices about what you can do with your kids, their extracurricular activities. Man, is it hard to serve when you think, I got to drive in a rural pastoral charge maybe 300 or 400 kilometers on a weekend, and I'm not sure if I can afford the gas or the new car. Man, is it hard to serve when clergy are facing real pressures. And I'm just wondering, what is the national church conversations around compensation for housing, around mileage, around the fact that we seem to be doing wonderful things on the backs of clergy who are stressed out, who are run down, who are feeling a little left behind by the denomination that they love and continue to serve. So I'm wondering if you could offer some comment around those issues. Thank you.
I have to say first, there are no simple solutions to any of those, and we're aware of all of those issues. The General Council Executive meeting last week has temporarily raised the minimum mileage reimbursement rate from 41 cents to 46 cents. And that's based on a CRA rate. And the General Secretary has authorization to extend that beyond the end of September if fuel prices remain high. We're also looking at and talking with other denominations about their rates of reimbursement, and that will factor into decisions of the General Secretary for the 2023 mileage rate. Housing is an issue for all Canadians, and how we respond to that and meet the needs that ministry personnel have and still have a sustainability for congregations to hire, pay, call, and have ministry personnel is a real bind. Right now, I'm working with a team of experts around how we can better position the cost of living groups to be reflective of a basket of economic metrics that are weighted so that those which are the greatest drain on a household have more reflection on the group categorization. So it's early stages. We hope to have that piece of work done by the end of the summer so the General Council Executive can look at it in the early fall. In terms of cost of living annual economic adjustment, that was a hard-won battle in my early time on the executive as a governor, because each year we'd come and say the cost of living is X, and the executive would say, well, we can't afford that. So this year we'll just give this much and we'll catch up next year. And at some point we had like a 20% deficit or accumulated cost of living that had not been reflected in minimum salaries. So we said to the General Council, then with Human Resources Committee, brought a proposal saying that we do an annual cost of living increase based on this formula, which is based on the year previous CPI, and announce that. There will not be a debate on the floor. And so for the last 20 years, there have been annual cost of living increases to minimum salaries based on the Consumer Price Index. We're looking at that. The Consumer Price Index that we would be looking at is 2021, which is 1.7%. That is not reflective of the reality at the moment. And so the General Secretary asked the executive on the weekend to allow him some time until September to determine what cost of living economic adjustment will be for 2023, because we may have to look at a different formula and move it up to a 2021-22 measure if the inflation rate is persistent. So we're trying to get at it. The biggest piece is going to be that cost of living group piece. And as I say, that is on the agenda and it is being worked on diligently at the moment, so stay tuned. In regards to benefits, It was perhaps in my 12 years in this role, the most difficult decision to be part of. Families are dependent on benefits, individuals are dependent on benefits in varying degrees. And it was one of those, I've seen it many times, but never as poignantly as I did here. If you do this, you generate this consequence. But if you don't do that, you generate that consequence. And so it came down to, how do we retain a sustainable benefit program, group health program, that's accessible to all members of the plans, employees, lay, and ordered. And ultimately, it was the conclusion that the optional plan could no longer be subsidized at the level that it was, and not jeopardize the base plan that all members were in. That meant that some folks are going to feel the consequence greater than other folks will, but at the end of the day, we still had a plan standing. We were also insistent, and this generated other decisions, that we wanted to keep the stop-loss provision of the prescription drug plan, which meant that at the point where a plan member has spent out of pocket $1,000 in a year, their subsequent prescriptions are covered fully by the plan. That provision was there before, but because of the different levels of reimbursement in the two plans, many of the folks in the optional plan seldom or only late in the year would have met that threshold. Not to discuss my pharmaceutical habits, but I would hit that threshold in October. I will now likely meet that threshold in June. And the additional cost of the plans had to be factored into the decision making, but that was still a sustainable piece. And so it was recommended that that be retained. So those are some of the things that we've been working with and trying to ensure provide some levels of stability and security for those who are responding to calls in this church.
Thank you, Alan, for dusting off your coat and joining us this weekend.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I will now ask our AV team to share a video of, I don't know the name of the person, but we have one of our retirees. We have a video of somebody who is retiring this year.
Hello, I'm Jan Richardson, and it was Blair Kirkby who invited me, pointed me toward ministry. He knew about the staff associate position for a paid lay person, 20 hours a week, beginning September of 1990, here at Statler United Church. My friends who knew me as an active lay member said, "Oh, so you're cutting back then?" Instead of volunteering, paid 20 hours a week. Ministry is not measured by the money or the hours. It's measured qualitatively. And 32 years later, here again at Statler United Church, I'm ready to transition back to being an active lay member. And I am so grateful for all that fits between these bookends of the Alpha and Omega, being 2 times I've served professionally with Statler United Church. And in between, I've served at Killam in Flagstaff County, at Sunnybrook in Red Deer, and at Knox in Drumheller in the wonderful valley known as the Ditch. Between the Alpha and Omega are wonderful in the meantime, in the meanwhile kind of things. They include people coming before paperwork. They include my teammate who made these bookends, Dave Denham, who was here alongside with me. and helpful in many ways, along with so many others, in that formal and informal training time as a student with St. Stephen's College in the field-based lay and diaconal ministry program. Each new opportunity, new idea, new person that I'm still meeting might bring a chance for me to come alongside, resource, equip, empower, commend, listen, learn. And some of those things that I remember fill my heart, even as I also know that ministry has taken me to the depths of that which is grievous about humanity. There's personality conflicts, ongoing sexism, rugged individuality and greed, shame, blame. Yet I'm called to serve and stand alongside people who trust me to enter into their lives and circumstances with integrity. I've been given glimpses of realism and resilience, wisdom and wonder, patience and persistence, the softening of hearts, the opening of eyes and homes and pocketbooks. And importantly, the mutuality of ministry, as myself and my family members needed times of prayer vigil, care and concern through health and life transitions. Jan, we need to call off that wedding rehearsal. Instead, can we come and talk to you about whether marriage is really going to work for us? Jan, can I borrow that throne chair? We're having a castle theme here at the school. Jan, why did they put makeup on my uncle's face? He's laying there dead. Jan, what are we supposed to do when there's more month than money every time? Jan, what would you think of me if I chose medical assistance in dying? Jan, can you help me practice they, them pronouns? Bookends, stories, chapters, the call continues. I'll stay, a nurturer, a farm girl rooted in rural Alberta, a life partner, a mother, a daycare provider, a teacher aide, a musician, an experiential learner, my latest teacher being our 3-year-old grandchild. Folks, we are to let our words and our ways be here in the meanwhile. Blessed to be a blessing.
Thank you, Jan. Jan just said thank you to Alan, who edited the video, and we really, anyway, she said something we didn't quite hear, so. Thank you, Jan, for that lovely video and your reflections, and more importantly, for your ministry among us here in Chinook Winds region and in the church as a whole. Sometimes in the life of a community of faith, we have to make difficult decisions. And sometimes those decisions involve the closing of a much beloved church home. In those occasions, the region has conversation with communities of faith if they consider the end of their life and make decisions about what their legacy might be as they move on and disperse their people among other communities of faith around us. One such conversation happened in this region when the St. Matthew's Community of Faith closed, and it resulted in a new fund for the benefit of the entire region. So please join with us as we watch the video to share some information about this exciting opportunity that we can all take advantage of in the coming years.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corinne Nairn, and I'm in Children's and Family Ministries at Southwood United Church. I am here on an entirely different mission this morning, though, and I am grateful to the planning team for giving us this time to introduce to you the David Ferguson Music Fund. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about our team, a lot more about David Ferguson, and about what this fund can do for your congregation, for individuals in your congregation and community, and for our Chinook Winds region. I am really honored to chair a team of 5. We have the Reverend Joanne Anquist from McDougall United Church, the Reverend Lisa Waits, Beth Elliott, who's a former member of St. Matthew's United Church, and also David Ferguson Jr. So who was David Ferguson, and just what is this fund? Let me tell you, I was really lucky to know Mr. Ferguson. I always knew him as the choir and orchestra teacher at Western Canada High School, where I went. I won't tell you how long ago it was. A long time ago. David was born in Calgary, and he grew up in a musical family. He enjoyed a long career as a chorister, a soloist, a teacher, a conductor of school programs for orchestra and band, a vocal coach, arranger, adjudicator. But really, he's best known for the many choirs and ensembles he led over the years in Calgary, working with singers of all ages. And it was his early involvement with the United Church that really set the stage for what was to become a lifelong recognized career in music. His singing talents as a young child was spotted early at Wesley United Church, where he was soon performing as a boy soprano. And by the age of 15, a harbinger of things to come, he was already directing that choir. A few years later, he was conducting the Calgary United Church Young People's Choir, a citywide group of performers that performed around local various congregations. He happened to meet a lovely alto when he was doing that, Barbara, and he married her in 1962, and they raised a lovely family of 3 musical children. David went on to become a music teacher. He retired from Western Canada in 1995, and by that time he was also the artistic director of the Mount Royal Conservatory of Musical choral program, and later served as the choir master of the Calgary Philharmonic Chorus. His choirs have won innumerable awards at festivals. He's toured nationally, internationally, and in addition to his choir accomplishments, he's received many recognitions for his achievements over the years. In all that time, he and his family continued to maintain a connection with the United Church. And after completing his master's degree in choral conducting from the University of Colorado, he went on to serve as the music minister at Southminster United Church, at St. Andrew's United Church, and finally at St. Matthew's United Church, where he retired. St. Matthew's, on his retirement, and when St. Matthew's was closing their building and selling, chose to set up a bursary fund, a legacy fund in his name, to honor his musical legacy, a lifelong dedication toward creating and sharing the joy of music, and also the opportunity to share that music for generations to come in our region. So this fund was created faithfully as that legacy to honor him as an important leader at St. Matthew's and in the choral community in Calgary. It was inspired for 3 purposes: to inspire children, youth, and young adults to experience God through music, to support music learning and education and growth for children, youth, and young adults in the United Church of Canada, with particular attention to choral and vocal musicianship, although not exclusively, as you'll find out in a minute, and to support program planning and education for faith communities, in particular, again, with youth and young adults, children, youth, and young adults, with particular attention to choral and vocal musicianship. So that's who that fund is for. This fund is an opportunity for any program that supports children, youth, or young adults, or any individual child, youth, or young adult to apply for a bursary. Do you have a kid in your congregation or a youth or young adult who maybe can't afford music lessons, but they just have a spark on the piano or a vocal gift? There's an opportunity that they could apply for a bursary to fund those lessons. How about you have a dream to start a small choir or a youth band in your church, and you can't afford to buy instruments or to get the right coaching that you need? You can apply for a bursary to do that. This is not just exclusive to the city, and that's really important. This is for the entire region from Red Deer South, for urban congregations, rural congregations, individuals and communities, and also groups. Perhaps you want to bring in somebody to do sessional instructions with your choir, or maybe you're a choir director that really just could use some new music, and buying 30 folios of any piece, as you know, if you're a music person, is not inexpensive. So you can apply for a bursary. So anything you can dream, you can apply. So how do you apply? It's easy. You can download a fillable PDF, and you can also get that directly from dfmusicfund@gmail.com. That's our email, dfmusicfund@gmail.com. Reach out there with any questions that you have to clarify. We can send you a fillable PDF. You can email it back, or you can print it. The last two important things to know are the deadlines. Our first deadline coming up is midnight on May 31st, just to give people time from this regional meeting to try to get in some applications. And also our second deadline will be October 15th in the fall, which aligns with the major granting deadlines for the United Church of Canada. Lastly, those should be dispersed, the May one for a fall program and the October one for January programming. Thank you so much for this time, and we hope to see lots of applications. We're looking forward to seeing them and seeing what this music fund will spark in our region. God bless. Thank you.
Well, thank you for Corinne for making that video. I'll invite now Taylor to come forward, our Chair of Business, to come forward for his time this afternoon.
Alan, may I have the equity slide put up, please? Okay, well, I'm going to say this much while Alan's preparing that. I had an insight while we had Janet's presentation to us in the theme time this morning. It was when Trina and I were talking about being sort of the ecclesial inclined people. And in addition to, how much fulfillment we might get in service of the church, preaching the gospel, celebrating the sacraments, how much we might, derive some satisfaction from doing the administration of the church. And what's that about? Why would we like that? Well, doing business and doing it well is an offering to God, we thought. So, I wish to offer this prayer as we enter into our business time. Almighty God, let our business rise up before you like incense, a pleasing offering in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I received this from Marcy Gibson and Kamiko Karpov. They are the co-research leads for the United Church of Canada Pastoral Relationships Thriving with Equity Research Project. I'm going to read what they have sent on to me about it and their invitation for you to participate. The United Church of Canada has engaged in a project of exploration and consultation to find patterns and insights on what hinders or helps pastoral relationships thrive for equity-seeking ministry personnel and communities of faith in which they serve. There are several ways that both ministry personnel and communities of faith can participate. The United Church of Canada recognizes that as much as we see ourselves as a church rooted in justice and equity with a vision of deep spirituality, bold discipleship, and daring justice, lived experience suggests that in many ways this is aspirational. And yet we continue to move in God's grace towards this. We recognize that racism, ableism, heterosexism, sexism, and other forms of oppression continue to exist in the United Church of Canada. Our desire is for ministers and communities of faith to thrive in their relationships. Yet we continue to hear equity-seeking ministry personnel, Indigenous, racialized, deaf, they speak English as an additional language, disabled, two-spirit, LGBTQIA+, non-binary, and female, describe the impacts of isms and not being able to bring their whole self, their whole full self into ministry. We also hear from communities of faith who feel ill-prepared to navigate differences and want to support and benefit from healthy pastoral relationships. The people best able to articulate how this impacts their ministries and pastoral relationships are those who live the experience. Some experiences might be of challenges and disconnects, and some might be of hope-filled ways of co-engagement that can serve as models for others. The Anti-Racism and Equity Office, in partnership with the Office of Vocation, which we heard about from Alan, has engaged in a research team to gather stories of ministers and communities of faith and collect information that can help identify current patterns in those inequities in our church. We seek to explore ways that inequities can be prevented or mitigated through denominational actions such as proactive education, early intervention, pastoral support, and systemic change. So thank you for your help. You should have a handbill on your table about that. What does that look like? Okay, you have seen it. Thanks to Helen Reed, who has brought that to us. You can see what she's holding up. It is our hope and our conviction that this research will incite and foster positive change in the United Church of Canada and beyond. How much time we got? Well, we have just 4 minutes, so we're not going to do that. Okay. As we move into our business section, I'll share just an introduction to our single item of business which we have this weekend. So the first thing I'll say is a reminder of what we heard in our orientation. When we invite you to come up to ask questions, you'll do so from that microphone. Could you please begin by sharing your name and your community of faith, which you are coming to us from? Long ago, at the first annual general meeting that was held in McKillop United Church in Lethbridge, a motion came forward that the region consider the process of becoming an affirming ministry. As a result, a working group was constructed when that motion was passed. That working group is going to present their work. So, as we said earlier yesterday about how our process will work, we'll remember the stuff that we heard from Dan about delegating work. Does that seem familiar? We remember that word, delegating? So we're not going to do quite so much of the debate stuff that we would normally do on a proposal that's received to us, because we've commissioned these people to do this work on our behalf. They are going to present their report, and we're not going to do any micromanaging of the words of that proposal that we might do otherwise with a proposal. We're going to receive it, we're going to ask questions for clarification, and then we'll have a vote on that tomorrow. How does that sound? Okay. I would like to invite forward the Affirming Working Group to present their work.
Everybody's coming, so great. Hi, everybody. Hi, nice to see you all. Let me introduce the team here. My name is Tracy Robertson. I'm the minister at St. Thomas United Church in Calgary. Ev Robertson is St. Thomas United Church as well. She's the affirming chair there. Reverend, you're not a doctor, are you? Reverend Darren Leopold from Innisfail. Pam Rocker, most people know who Pam Rocker is, Affirming Connections. Bill Moore from Central United Church in Calgary, and Keith Murray. And see, I'm going blank now because I don't know why, because you and I do a lot of things together. So Keith Murray from Hillhurst United Church. And the people that are not able to be here with us are Lawrence, seriously, you're going to have to forgive me. Lawrence
Or can? Is that right? What? Hycan. Hycan. There you go. Thank you, Barbara. And Jolita Datis from Lacombe, right? Lacombe. So, thank you to this whole team. I have been very blessed to be a part of this team and to be the chair of your Affirming Working Group for the last 19 months, 2 years, I don't know, something like that. And so it's been an interesting 2 years, hasn't it? Yeah, that's all we can say about that. The work that this working group did was to guide the region through the affirming process, and it has been full and diverse. However, not ideal, as we will all agree. We would much rather have been able to meet in person more often. However, doing things virtually has also allowed those of you from further distances to also be involved. That is something we need to keep in mind as a region going forward. We've learned so much. In terms of the affirming process, we could have had our vote last year, and after the feedback from you, it was decided to hold off for another year to allow for more opportunities to participate and engage. The last year has been full, as you can see from, we have the little picture that we had on the front of our report. There's lots of events that we opportunities that we gave to the region to participate and engage with. And it's also found at the top of that written report. We're not going to regurgitate the report. Everybody had a chance to read the report, but as we always say at the beginning of all of our events that we hosted, it's important to remember that this process is for the work of the region only, and that individual congregations and faith communities are still invited to discern their own paths surrounding if and when they embark on an affirming process. Whether your faith community is interested in becoming affirming or not, we still wanted all your voices to be heard. We thank you for participating and sharing over the last 19 months, and although we had hoped that the events we held this last year could have been in person, the pandemic just wouldn't have allowed it. But you engaged with us nonetheless, and for that we are truly grateful. So as part of hearing from you over the last 2 years, we thought the working group could share some of our own personal highlights and learnings as part of this presentation. So I'll start, and then whoever else wants to come share from this group can do so. So for me and my faith community at St. Thomas in Calgary, the most transformative program offered during this affirming process was the Queer Virtue book study. My congregation participated at the same time as you from the region, and then we incorporated our own debriefs after every virtual regional gathering. Not only did I learn so much about Liz's book, but it was amazing to hear the feedback from my congregation, who have been affirming since 2011. Having it on Zoom was a blessing because we had more diverse involvement than we would have had at our individual church. So being in a virtual community garnered additional opportunities to share ideas and open minds and hearts. I've used Liz Edmonds' virtues a lot since studying her book, and I know that I will continue to use it in the future. As mentioned, St. Thomas has been an affirming congregation for 11 years, and we consistently still learn about how important it is for us to be an affirming congregation. And as Affirming Connections has taught us, to be PI, public, intentional, and explicit about our inclusivity. In 2019, we painted a retaining wall, rainbow colors, and since then, I've received at least 2 calls from people not part of the congregation who saw the wall as they drove by, hoped we would be a safe place that they could talk to, needed to talk. I know for a fact that one of those lives was literally saved because of that public, intentional, and explicit rainbow wall. And the last story was from a congregant, a grandmother, whose grandchild announced that they wanted to be called William, not the female name given to them at birth. The family all said, all right, and that was that. Even Grandpa, who could have reacted negatively, said, "I've always wanted a grandson." This congregant said that she attributes that acceptance as coming from all the work we've done as an affirming church. So now I'm going to invite my team members to share their insights or stories now. And Lawrence, well, I already said Lawrence chose to be online due to being in connection with somebody that had COVID, probably Dave Holmes. Thanks a lot, Dave. Anyway, that's okay. I'm just kidding. So I'm gonna invite whoever wants to come from my team to come up and share their thoughts.
These glasses are going to break one day with the mask coming off. Yes. Anyways, it was 34 years ago this year that the United Church decided they would welcome to consider for ministry members who were gay and lesbian. I was just beginning my year-long internship at that point. But it's an issue that's been very important to me all the way throughout my life. And I realized that during that time, those 34 years, significant changes have happened in our world. Since that declaration was made in 1988, the Berlin Wall came down in 1989. Apartheid ended in South Africa in 1990. And for those of you, not myself, but others in the room, I'm sure, who are Simpsons fans, the Simpsons TV series didn't exist. It was still a short on the Tracy Ullman show at that point. The world has changed a lot during that 34 years. And I know my journey as a gay minister in this denomination has changed during that time. But I think we've engaged in lots of conversation, especially during the past 2 years. And my favorite event that we did was the Ask Anything night. We didn't get a lot of attendance, which was too bad. It was a stormy night and whatever. But people were able, in that intimate group, to ask those difficult questions and not be judged and not be poo-pooed and to have their opinions valued. And I think that's what we've strived to do as this working group. We have strived to listen to you. We've strived to give answers, provide resources. We know there's lots of learning still to do, and that'll be the next stage of this process. But we thank you for all members of the region who in one way or the other have taken part in this process.
Good afternoon. As Tracy pointed out, and Daryl as well, we offered many opportunities over the last couple of years for people to engage, ask questions. And a lot of them were successful, particularly Queer Virtue, as you talked. One that's near and dear to my heart was the very last opportunity that we offered. And that was we called it a no agenda night. People were invited to call in on Zoom, ask any questions, make any comments. This was their opportunity. We offered nothing in exchange except for an ear. We tried to answer. It was a most moving night. The people who phoned in were full of courage. Their anxiety was lowered because their trust in us as a safe place was heightened. It was an opportunity to share on both fronts. I'll never forget that night. It was very moving. Having said that, it was well worth the second year in this exploration of affirming. Well worth it, for sure. And today, we would invite every one of you to have an open mind, reach out, and be part of that communication, that dialogue. Believe it or not, you will change lives, your life, and the person who's discussing affirming with you. Thank you.
Hi all. I just wanted to share one important experience from this entire journey. A young woman came into my office a year ago, and because of the work that we shared with her, she came to these lands, to this region, from another country, seeking asylum, fleeing religious persecution as a lesbian woman. And she had to leave behind her girlfriend, the love of her life, to seek safety. She never thought that she could be a part of the church, but her faith was so important to her. And because of the work that we have done, she took some of the work and shared it with her girlfriend, a beacon of hope for a young woman that is still in hiding, unable to get out of a difficult situation. Our decision this weekend matters for all those lives, not just in our region, but looking to us from the outside, seeking hope. So I encourage you to reach into your heart and think how you would like to support this motion.
Hi folks, I'm Pam Rocker. It's lovely to see 30% of your face. What an honor it's been to work with these amazing folks, and so many of you who, even if it's something that you haven't felt personally in your life, had said that this is important, not only as a matter of human rights, but as a matter of faith. Friends, some of your ministry colleagues are not out to you. Some of your committee members and board members and congregational members are not out to you, but perhaps to me or to other folks standing up here. And that's why it's so meaningful to me that Chinookwiin's region in central and southern Alberta is contemplating this very public and intentional and explicit step to say that when you interact with the region, you will experience something that affirms who you are and that we treasure who you are. It's a shame that even in this day and age, 34 years later, there are still folks who feel like their ministry, their volunteer commitment, the place where they feel they want to belong the most, might transform and change into an unwelcome place if they are 100% who they are, if they use the right pronouns for their partner, and if they say, "This is who I am, and I know it is not a sin." This goes against the dominant narrative that we see of Christian nationalism and Christian supremacy that continues to come. The borders are porous, and we see that. So just like Kim shared earlier, I see hope. Because we are not a church that 500 years later says, okay, we might think about doing something. We've been a leader in the public square. That is why I am a part of the United Church of Canada. That is why I am glad to be all of the colors at different times when I need to be. Because you have created a home for me, and you're willing to create a home for so many others. So thank you for engaging in this process. This is not the beginning and not the end. We are being Christ together. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. See, such a great team. Hey, such a great team. And I want to do a huge shout out to Chris Mapoy. Is he here? Oh, there he is. Our Chris. I've just adopted you. Chris. Chris has been by our side for the entire time as our staff liaison with Chinook Winds, and has been our guide and our support and our, what do we do in this situation? And all those questions that we have along the way. I don't know, Chris, can you deal with that question? I don't know how to answer that. Anyway, so thank you from the bottom of our hearts for that, your commitment to this work and to this group as well. So at this point, I'm going to read the background, the official background of this affirming working group, and then Keith is going to read the proposed affirming statement and the motions that we're going to be motion that we're going to be voting on tomorrow. And after all that is read, we will open the floor for clarifying questions. All right. So here's the background. The Affirming Working Group of Chinook Winds Regional Council has been working since 2020 to lead the regional affirming process, discerning with leadership in our region on what it means to be public, intentional, and explicit in our declaration of solidarity with the 2S LGBTQAIP+ community and our affirmation that all people will be included in our ministries and in all aspects of the region's life and leadership without limitations based on identity, expression, or orientation. The Affirming Working Group has engaged communities of faith and their leadership in Chinook Winds Regional Council, offering learning opportunities like the Queer Virtue Study, regional town hall Q&As and presentations, as well as listening campaigns and advocacy. We are looking forward to presenting a motion to Regional Council in 2022, and in solidarity moving together on a continuing journey of public, intentional, and explicit affirmation as people of faith. Affirming ministries are at the heart of the affirming movement. There are over 200 affirming ministries and ministries in the process across Canada. Ministries include communities of faith, community ministries, chaplaincies of all kinds, care homes and supported living, outdoor ministries, camps, regional councils, and more. The Affirming Ministries program was launched in 1992. The United Church officially endorsed the program in 2000 and encouraged its ministries to participate. The Affirming program encourages all United Church bodies and other Christian traditions to study and discern what it means to be publicly welcoming and inclusive in their context. The program also encourages the study of other United Church resources that promote the inclusion of other marginalized groups. The Affirming Working Group has led the discernment of our region's journey to becoming an affirming ministry of the United Church of Canada, which is the first step in Affirm United process. The Affirming Working Group would like to express its gratitude for the leadership of the members and communities of faith in Chinook Winds and presents the following affirming ministry statement and motion for decision at 2022's Chinook Winds Regional Council gathering, having completed our work as faithful discernment.
The Chinook Winds Affirming Statement. The Chinook Winds Regional Council of the United Church of Canada is committed to being an expression of God's radical welcome, generosity, and inclusion of all people. We acknowledge and lament that the Church, its traditions, and teachings have caused great harm to members of the 2S LGBTQAIP+ communities. By contrast, we believe that the Chinook Winds region is called to follow Jesus' wisdom in the way of radically inclusive love. We do this as evidence of our belief that all people are unconditionally loved by Creator, whose divine image we reflect. Chinook Winds region will live out its ministry by intentionally creating safer spaces of belonging with members of the 2S LGBTQAIP+ communities and their families in all regional ministries. We affirm that someone's gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation is sacred, will be celebrated, and will not be a barrier towards full participation in the life and work of the Church. We affirm that people will be fully included in all aspects of the region's life, leadership, and ministry without limitation based on identity, expression, or orientation. We commit ourselves to the intersectionality that living into becoming an affirming ministry will require. Together, we will use tangible resources to embody a ministry that is public, intentional, and explicit of our call to live out these values, and that even as we make mistakes, we commit to continually learning and evolving. The continuing work of the Chinook Winds Regional Council as an affirming region is to develop a plan to integrate the affirmation decision into all aspects of the Regional Council's work, including the Executive Council, working groups, pastoral relations, First Third Ministry, regional children, youth, young adult, camps, and campus ministry, and regional programs. 2S LGBTQAIP+ stands for Two-Spirit, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, Queer, Asexual/Androgynous, Intersex, Pansexual, and the plus is for all ways of gender identity and sexuality beyond the limitations of the acronym 2S LGBTQAIP+. We got it all in there. We place 2S for Two-Spirit at the front of the character string. This is to acknowledge that Two-Spiritness is older than any Christian belief system and was celebrated in indigenous cultures before the shaming and attempted erasure by colonizing Christians. Its prominent placement signifies a commitment to honoring Indigenous Two-Spirit people and their gifts. I will now read the motion. It is moved that the Chinook Winds Regional Council affirm the priority of continuing to become an affirming regional council, endorse the regional affirming statement, direct the Executive Council of Chinook Winds and Regional Executive Minister to complete the process of accreditation with Affirm United, and plan a public, intentional, and explicit celebration at the 2023 General Meeting of Chinook Winds Regional Council, having set a threshold for the affirm vote at 75%. It is moved that the Chinook Winds Regional Council disband the affirming working group, having successfully undertaken a period of faithful discernment and learning leading to the approval of the regional affirming statement. It is moved, finally, that the Chinook Winds Regional Council establish a regional affirming ministry council to support the ongoing work of being an affirming regional council. Thank you.
So we invite questions for clarification. So if you have any questions or comments, go to the microphone.
Hello? Hello? Oh. Okay, keep going. Keep talking. I'm Bree Nelson from Scarborough United Church. It's very clear that this is the region rather than the faith community, and Scarborough is already an affirming community. So I guess my question or clarification is, through this next part of the process, can Scarborough be partnering, or what's the way that the community of faith can support or be part of or be rejuvenated by that regional process?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'll let Keith come and talk a little bit about something that could be in the future. But one of the things that affirming churches can do going forward is definitely, yes, we want you to partner and do all sorts of collaborating with us. And we haven't got huge plans yet, but after our celebration next year, we'll be able to give opportunities and ask for opportunities that people might want to help us with in the future going forward, and to keep that affirming work going and prominent. Does that make sense? Do you want to talk about some of the future work? All right, you can.
some of the ongoing work that we have already been developing in motion. Our Affirming Working Group has been partnering with a filmmaker in the United States on an international production which actually tells the story, a little known story about United Church history. It is quite exciting. Back in 1946, do anyone know what happened in 1946? RSV, very good. That was the first time the word homosexual made it into the Bible. There was a young man in Quebec studying seminary who had just finished his first year of Koine Greek, and he felt a calling to be a minister. But he read in 1 Corinthians that homosexuals will not inherit the kingdom, and he said, wait a minute, I'm called to be a minister by God, but I'm also gay. This must be wrong. So he looked at the Greek, and he actually wrote, as a 20-year-old, the translators of the Revised Standard Version, and dug deeply in the Yale archives as a correspondence between those 20 translators and this young man, and they agreed with him that it was the wrong use of the word. So this young man turns out to be a United Church minister who is still alive, now retired, living on Vancouver Island, and we are partnering to tell this story that is a part of our history, a prophetic witness standing up against what initiated a viral spread of homophobia and hate because of a mistranslation that started it all. And so with this, we are trying to develop ministry that will help to unpack all of the clobber verses, all those questions you all get asked. How do we unpack these pieces of scripture to our communities? And so that's some of the work going forward. If you're interested in supporting the project, we are beginning to fundraise to finish the film and create the ministry. Chinook Winds Region will be holding the pot, so we can tell you more about that. Just come ask any of us about that over the next day or two. We'd be happy to let you know. But that's just one example of the many things we'll be doing in our ongoing work to support you all as pastoral charges and communities of faith in your affirming work. Thanks, Tracy.
Susan Lukey, High River United Church. A simple question. Where do we find a copy of this so we can read through it?
Taylor's coming up. Oh, he's going to the microphone.
Tomorrow you'll be presented with the text when we move to the decision phase, so there'll be a PowerPoint, and you will receive the vote. We're going to send them early because you saw how votes when we sent them came late. We'll make sure that that text is in that vote as well, so you'll see it in the morning also. Is that good?
Awesome, thank you. It's also on the website, I'm told. I'm hearing. Do you want it read again? I'm being asked. Do we want it read again? I'm getting yes, no, no, okay. We can get you copies ahead of time if you want them. I'm just saying that like off the cuff. I don't know if I can actually make that decision. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up, good, phew. Any other questions? All right, well, you know who we all are now. Oh, do you have a, okay. You know who we all are. We're gonna be here the whole weekend, and so if you have any questions between now, especially between now and tomorrow's vote, just come to any one of us and we're happy to answer the questions.
Sorry, Leela Curry from Gates Memorial United Church. So the statement from the United Church of Canada's website says, your statement might include inclusivity in a variety of areas: class, race, sex, age, and ability. And so I'm wondering, as an affirming region, I understand the inclusivity of LGBTQ in all the letters. I'm wondering how we reflect the rest of it. Multiculturalism, race, biracial, couples, things like that still find their ways into stigmas in our culture,
yes, yeah.
but are so much accepted in our church and encouraged in our church and loved in our church. And so I wonder how our statement reflects that.
Does anybody else want to take that one? Chris? You will? Okay.
I think one of the things to keep in mind when it comes to affirming is the definition and work of affirming since 1984, when Affirm United was formed, was specifically to focus primarily on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and issues around that because they had been targeted by Christian communities. It continues to expand, and of course we recognize that including all diversities is totally important, but for the work that we've been focusing on has been specifically around issues of gender identity, sexual orientation, and expression. I don't know, is there anything else you want to say that? It's important work, and we are always aware of the intersectionalities because none of us are singly a person of gender or sexual orientation. We're multifaceted people. And so we encourage that work to continue. And if that is the motion of this community, then absolutely that could be something that could be focused on is more inclusivity, diversity work. But yeah, for the purposes of what we're doing, this is what we've focused on. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that gives us a great opportunity for the ongoing work to dive into some of those deeper others, right? So that we're not othering. Yeah. No other questions? Okay, great. Thank you for your time, everybody, and look forward to the vote tomorrow.
Thank you again, Affirming Working Group. We appreciate you bringing your work to us. We are going to take a break until 4 o'clock. Could you please be back in your seats by 4 o'clock? Thank you.
Hello, friends. Can you text all your friends who aren't in the room and say it's 4 o'clock on the dot? Staff of the region, I think that you're going to be needed somewhere close to here, so you can maybe start making your way forward. Let's see here. What did Adam say when he was asked his favorite holiday? It's Christmas, Eve. Okay, you better start texting your friends because this is not going to end well. Okay. What did God's people say when food fell from heaven? Oh, manna. Okay. Some of you should know the answer to this one. What did pirates call Noah's boat? The Ark. You get it? Pirates say Arr. When I have to start explaining it, it's no longer funny. That's a 4? Out of what? Okay. Why didn't anyone want to fight Goliath? It seemed like a giant ordeal. Stephen Harper. All right, people, welcome back. We are glad to see you.
You're supposed to be there. You're the one.
Yeah, you're listening. Okay, staff, come on up.
Don't you like being the smart one?
Mr. Snow, we'll invite you forward as well. Right? No, for the next part. Oh, okay, it's okay. Oh, Tony, sorry, I misspoke. I thought you were, Tony, your moment is not for a few minutes.
Let him come. Let him come. Just let him come. It's easier.
Now, I hope you've all had some caffeine or some Slurpee and some cookies, because the cookies downstairs were delightful. We have a few things that we would like to share with you at this point. We're going to have Trina introduce. Can you grab a mic? Thanks. We're going to have Trina introduce the staff, and the staff are going to explain what their roles are within the region.
We need Joel.
Okay. We need Joel. Oh, he's hiding. I'm just giving you a running update of what's being set up here. Okay, I'm going to try and get this under control. We are going to start right away. Trina is going to introduce the staff, and they're going to tell everyone what their role is in the region. We're going to hear from Tony Snow and Affirming Connections. And then there's one more piece that we're going to talk about as well, but let's let the introductions begin. Hi, Jess. So nice to see you. So Trina, I turn the mic over to you.
Thank you. Well, I have to tell you, it's a real privilege to work among this group of fine humans that serve as the staff team here in Chinook Winds region. I know that there are some faces that will be new to you, and so I want to just kind of explain how the various positions are working and why they're up on the stage today. And then I'm going to ask each one of them to come forward and answer the question, what would I call you for? Okay? So hopefully the idea is that at the end of this, you know if you've got a question that the region can help, who to reach out to and how to do that. So the first thing is, if you're not sure, just ask me and I'll tell you. So I'm going to start with our First Third team. So we've been putting a lot of time and energy into developing and supporting First Third Ministries in Chinook Winds region. We did that by engaging in a partnership with Pacific Mountain, and Pacific Mountain has a whole First Third Ministry team. So Chris Mapoy is our local First Third Ministry staff person, but he's part of the Pacific Mountain and Chinook Winds combined team, which mean that the resources of the whole team are available to the Chinook Winds. So there are certain positions within the First Third team that are based in BC that are actually doing regular work in Chinook Winds region. So I wanted to bring those two people with today to introduce to you, because you'll see their names and their faces on a pretty regular basis. But just so you know, they're not actually on your payroll. So Pacific Mountain is being a little bit generous with their resources as well. So you have Chris on your payroll as First Third staff, and then the other resources are shared resources among the two regions. So the First Third team is Pamela, Mary Nickel, and Chris. So we'll invite them to answer the question.
Hi everyone, my name is Pamela Evans and I'm the First Third Ministry team lead for both regions. And if you were phoning me, you would phone me with questions about campus ministry for Chinook Winds. And you'd also call me if you had some questions or you needed support or you had an idea about what you might do with children, youth, families, and or young adults in your community of faith, and you needed some support to see that come to fruition. So what is God's dream for your ministry with young people, and how can we support it? Those are the reasons you'd call me. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Mary Nickel, Regional Minister with First Third Ministry. You'd call me if you'd like to chat about VST's certificate in Children, Youth, and Family Ministry. Support for leadership in the First Third for education, training, resource connection, collegial connection. Camping ministry, support and connection there in the network in Chinook Winds. And finally, there is one more, and it is Faith at Home resources. I share that responsibility with Pamela, and supporting Faith at Home and supporting leadership in their connection with families.
My name is Chris Mapoy, and halftime, you'd call me as your primary focal point for the First Third Ministry here in Chinook Winds Regional Council. I'm part of a great team of First Third Ministry animators who breathe life into regional First Third Ministry events like the one some of your children and youth and young adults are attending today. The other halftime role that I occupy for Chinook Winds Regional Council is in the area of justice, community of faith networks. So some of the networks that we support here in the Chinook Winds Regional Council is the Western Intercultural Ministry Network. We have a new and emerging network that specifically is trying to bring communities of faith together around the issue of pastoral care. I also support the Interregional Being Good Relations Network, which we share with Northern Spirit Regional Council. And I will be working with General Council as well as with the region as a whole in developing some of our justice strategies as a region. So you might call me if your community of faith has a specific justice initiative that it would like to see supported and lifted up by the region, or if there's any advocacy that you'd like to see the Chinook Winds Regional Council engage in within Alberta and in the wider world. And of course, I've had the distinct pleasure in my role as Justice and Networks Coordinator to work with the Affirming Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to justice work that Chris does, the region is also in partnership with Hillhurst to support the Urban Indigenous Ministries portfolio that's held by Tony Snow. But Tony is actually an employee of Hillhurst, not an employee of the region, and so the accountability rests there. But we're in conversation about whether that's actually the best way to support that ministry. So we're in the process of discerning whether that should actually continue to be a Hillhurst role supported by the M&S grant, or whether that should just become a regional role. So watch for news around that in the coming months. Next we'll go to our communications. I would say team, but she is a team of herself and fantastic. Shelley.
So I'm Shelley, and I look after the communications for Chinook Winds region. But I'm also always interested in the stories of your communities of faith and the stories of your ministry that you're excited about. So I love receiving submissions from you. And even if you've had a fun event or an interesting photo, I love it when you send those to me. And you folks love reading those because they get clicked on. I'm firmly rooted in the mission part of the theological banquet. We are all neighbors and all sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with wonderful, amazing stories of ministry to serve. And with that, I'm also support the clusters. There were some good conversations around the tables today. And if you would be interested in hosting your cluster at your church, please talk to me. Thank you.
We also share a staff person with the Northern Spirit region, and that's our archivist. So she is actually an employee of Northern Spirit, but serves part of her time for the archives in Chinook Winds. Welcome, Leanne.
Hi, I'm Leanne Templeton. You would call me if you had questions about preparing a deposit of records. The general rule of thumb is every 3 to 5 years. You should be trying to identify which records are now inactive and no longer need to be in your office space. Or I've noticed through the pandemic, there's been a lot of turnover of office staff. So I'm talking with people who have never done anything with the historic roll, or have people calling, requesting baptism records and things like that, and need to write up a transcription of the register. So if your staff have any questions about records, or which ones are permanent and which ones can be shred, which ones need to be held for 7 years, etc., just send them to me. Thanks.
Another area that we've identified as a very important part of the life and work of Chinook Winds region is to support our leaders, recognizing that is a really critical part of us being able to achieve our mission together as a region. So one of the ways that we've done that is to generate another partnership with Pacific Mountain Region for leadership. And Allison is officially employed a quarter time in Chinook Winds region and half time in Pacific Mountain region.
Thank you. Hello, Chinook Winds. You would call me if you have forming in your heart a desire to learn something, and you're like, I don't know where I would go to learn that. It might be about your skill base, it might be about your spirituality, it might be about your concrete leadership in your community, or it could be something else and you just want to explore the idea. You would phone me with that urge. You would also phone me if you're coming to Naramata because I would like to have dinner with you.
We also have a really important part of the work that we do is support to communities of faith. Joel Denhan is actually working as a consultant with the region to support work around community of faith strategy and property work.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see three-dimensional people. But I also want to commend all of you for the fact that over the past couple of years, we've learned to do a great deal of really complicated work on Zoom. And so when those questions come up regarding land or buildings or plans for your ministry in your community and how you can take assets and turn them into blessings, I'd like you to give me a call. That's my role. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. We have a really fabulous staff team, and those of us who are doing program work would have great difficulty achieving any of those things without some administrative support. So we'll bring up next Mauricio.
Hello, my name is Mauricio Araújo. I'm the assistant to the hardworking Trina Duncan, and it truly is a pleasure. And I see her schedule, so I know what she has to deal with on a regular basis. Why would you call me? Definitely if you need anything from the Executive Administrator's Office, or if you don't know who to call, you just have that question, I have no idea who to call. Let me call Mauricio. He's going to contact me with the right person and get you on your way. So that's why you would call me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Mauricio also provides support to the executive. Jess. Jess supports the Pastoral Relations Group.
My name is Jess Beckerly, and I'm the assistant to the Pastoral Relations Minister, which is Stephen Harper currently, and incoming Karen Medland, and also offer office support. So that's half-time for Chinook Winds, and I kind of have a other cool job too, is I'm half-time for Pacific Mountain as Brenda Wolf is on medical leave. So I'm half-time in both regions, and part of that is admin to leadership, so Allison, which is awesome. You would call me if Stephen's voicemail is full. Or you have a church hub question, or you need to reach someone. Those are kind of the major things that come into the voicemail. So you can call me for anything.
So moving into the Pastoral Relations team, there was a position that was primarily volunteer position in Calgary Presbytery that we identified through the Pastoral Relations work that we were doing as being something that we really felt we needed to develop. And so we have had Jeffrey serve in a particular role for chaplaincies.
Well, thanks, Trina, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm the hospital ministry coordinator, and it's a role that I feel very passionate about because in the hospitals we can provide people with a ministry of presence where we can be with them compassionately listening and empathetically present when they're in times of difficulty. And I'm very happy to tell you that I just had lunch with one of the spiritual health practitioners from Red Deer Hospital, and she tells me they're pretty much ready to welcome us back into the hospitals. So you would call me as we're starting to develop plans and programs for volunteers, religious community volunteers in the hospitals. And if you're clergy and you'd like me to visit someone in Calgary, I can do that for you. Thanks.
So then I want to talk a bit about our Pastoral Relations team. As you know, Stephen Harper is moving on to other things, and I'm kind of mad at him for that. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with Stephen and to experience the gifts that he has brought to this region. And I would like to invite us to take a moment to thank him for the work that he's offered in this region as his time in this role.
Thank you. You know, our website is really good, and I don't know who put this on. I kind of think maybe it was you, Shelley, or it could have been Lee, or it could have been a combination, a super team, if you will, of Lee and Shelley. Can you imagine? So on there is all the reasons you might call. So listen to these. You don't have to remember them because, again, they're on the website. If there's a change or imminent change in pastoral relationship and personnel, if the possibility of a new ministry person or job is going to be added, if you are writing a community faith profile, if you'd like to request that your ministry personnel be granted sacraments, especially if they're a student, or if you'd like to require sacramental elder, we do that as well. If your ministry personnel would like a marriage license to activate it or inactivate it, if you would like to be a pastoral relations or regional council liaison in your community faith, that's good. And if you call the Pastoral Relations Office, you will get the lovely Karen Medland. Any of those, she's going to help you out. Thank you so much.
And thanks again to Stephen. So Karen, I hope that you knew all that. So we had a search committee conduct a search for a new pastoral relations minister, and once again, a thank you to that team who supported that work. And when we discovered that Karen wasn't able to start until June 1st, I asked that she come to this meeting so that she could have an opportunity to meet with some of you and so that you could get to know her face and a little bit about her. So we'll just take a minute to let her introduce herself to you.
So hello, beautiful people. I am Karen Medland. Wow, what do you want to know? I celebrate 20 years of ordination this year. I can't believe that. That's crazy. 20 years of ordination. I did 17 years in pastoral ministry in a variety of congregations. I spent the last 3 years working with my colleague Brenda Fox in the Office of Vocation. And then the opportunity to move over to pastoral relations came along, and I was really excited because I really think the well-being and the support of congregations and their pastoral relationship with their ministry staff and the ministry staff in that, supporting all of that is probably the key to the life and vitality of the church as a whole. So when the opportunity to move over to pastoral relations came along, I absolutely jumped at it. And the only reason I had to wait to the end of June is there's so much chaos going on in the Office of Vocation with people retiring and all kinds of stuff. So they made me wait. But I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I will be moving to my new place on the 15th of June, and you will all hear endless stories about Sadie and Simba. Miss Sadie is my Shih Tzu Maltese Cross pup, and Simba is her cat. And I wanted to be clear, she's her cat, not my cat. And so you'll all get to meet them and see them because they'll be hanging around with me lots. So it's really a great pleasure to be here, and I can't wait to meet you all over the next couple of years. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
We also are served well by some deployed staff from the General Counsel Office, Brenda Fox and Vicki Nelson, who work out of the General Counsel Office but are assigned to our region as part of their territory. And you'll be hearing from them individually later on in our time together. So your Chinook Winds Region staff team. So we've asked Allison just to stay a little longer and just give a bit of information about some of the upcoming leadership events that you might want to take part of and know about.
Thank you. Thank you, Trina and Court. So this is just a moment to say a little bit about Leadership, which is an initiative to equip leaders for the ministry that emerges around you and within you. We're interested in skill building, we're interested in formation of character, and we're interested in engaging theological ideas, and ideally all of those together, building strong, mutual, trusting relationships between colleagues. I don't know about you, but already the last 2 days it's been a lot of sitting. So maybe the next part of this brief presentation you're actually going to receive standing up. Get up and reach for something or someone, or not, bend over, and I'm going to keep going. Leadership has been around for more than 10 years, and it's great that we're serving in both regions now. In your booklet, there's a report. And because it's leadership, we're just going to take a moment to learn. Okay, in the report, there was one of these. What's this called? QR code. But I bet a bunch of you have never clicked on one before. But right now, Jess is bringing you a QR code for you to practice clicking on. Yes, turn to your neighbor. Someone at your table knows how to do this. Take 30 seconds to learn. Look what happens. Watch what happens. If you need help, put up your hand. This magic puzzle will take you to our website where you can read lots more than I'm just going to talk and tell you. QR code learning, check. Thanks for smiling, Pam. Be comfortable, be comfortable. They can sit, you can be comfortable standing or sitting. Going forward, we will be offering events in person and events online. There will be a mixture of things. See, they're so excited about learning that they're not listening to me anymore. Yeah, it was a good can of worms. Good job on the QR code, everybody. Come back to me. One in-person event that I want to lift up is Total Clergy Wellbeing. It's coming up in the fall, and it is an opportunity for those of you who want to be deeply refreshed and renewed in your soul, who are ministry leaders, to do so. These cards, somebody's going to come and grab them and put them around on tables. Here comes Nancy. Online, I'd like to say that the theological banquet materials that Janet has been sharing, we have available through Leadership. If you would like to engage in this process with your congregation, you see, they're still doing the QR code. That's awesome. This is going to be memorable. If you would like to introduce the theological banquet materials to your community of faith, we can connect you with videos that have Janet sharing her material, as well as leader resource materials and participant materials. Check that out on our website. Plus, Janet has a book. A hush fell over the crowd. Janet Gear has a book. It was supposed to be here right now. Luckily for us, it's going to be published and delivered here in 4 days. Too bad. So the book will be available, and this card gets you 20% off. What? Yes. So make sure you pick up one of those. Within Leadership, we only have so many resources of our own, so we want to amplify the good work that others are doing, and Janet is one of those good workers. Drum roll, please. Use your tables, use your laps, bring it on. Bigger, 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 bigger. Quieter, 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 quieter. Bigger, 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 bigger. Announcing the event of the year, sponsored by Leadership, hosted in Chinook Winds at Simons Valley United Church. Bold witness, relentless grace. Yes, Simons Valley team have planned this incredible event. Leadership is so proud to sponsor and encourage. We're doing some behind-the-scenes thing, website and registration and that sort of stuff. Bold witness, relentless grace is going to be an incredible in-person event. Again, there is promotional materials you can take home to your community of faith to share. Look at that big giant poster back there. It's got all kinds of information. You don't need me talking about it. I just want to know, are you going to be there? The people said, wait a second. Do you think you might be able to be there? The people said, okay, it's the afternoon. That's good. The website is up. The ticket launch starts tomorrow. I encourage you to jump on that website, check out the tickets, check out how you can participate, and encourage lots of people to be there. Truly, it will be remarkable. With thanks to incredible organizers at Simons Valley, Leadership is happy to amplify the good work that's already happening in Chinook Winds. Look forward to talking to you over the rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. And now I'll invite Tony Snow to come forward. He has a bit of a presentation this afternoon. Hi, Tony. Well.
Good afternoon. You're all all paying attention, I can tell. So my name is Tony Snow. I come from the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, west of Calgary. I am the Indigenous Minister for the Chinook Winds region, and I work with the various church parties that are here, the communities of faith, on their recognition, on their reconciliation programming, the reconciliation work. I'm going to give a bit of a presentation that was put up into the booklet for today, and talk a bit about the ministry and the work that we're doing for all those here and all those that are listening to our presentation online. The Indigenous ministry began as an effort by the church to address some of the legal and policy efforts of the church. So it coalesced around the commitments made in the Indian Residential Schools Settlement Agreement in 2007-2008, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out of the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, and the studies that were taking place across the country were an important part of information gathering and assessment of the needs of Indigenous ministry, the needs of working with Indigenous people toward reconciliation. So a lot of this work has been an ongoing effort since the first apologies in 1986 and in 1998. A continual work by the church to address some of the historic wrongs, some of the historic abuses, some of the historic efforts that have been made to reach out. So in my generation, I grew up in the Stoney Reserve and grew up with my father, who was an ordained minister, the first ordained minister in the United Church in Alberta, and grew up in the dual faith tradition of Christianity and of our Indigenous teachings. One of the primary things was the ecumenical conference that formed a lot of the theological framework that the Indigenous people would take forward. That comes from a historic place in the origins of Christianity in these lands. And so the workings of Christianity has always been a bridge to build together and to work forward from a common set of interests and a common set of ideals. And we have a presentation here to talk about the Indigenous ministries and the key priorities that we are looking at. So that will be put up online. One of the things that we are focusing around for this ministry is the idea of the United Church of Canada and right relations work, regional right relations work that is around us and part of the interest of the communities now. It wasn't always a big interest, wasn't always a big draw for our communities, but today, after the Kamloops and after the efforts at the calls to action and the implementation of that through the Right Relations Network, the awareness has grown and the responsibilities around that awareness are highlighted. Part of the other work that we then do is the interface of the church and the interface of our communities, our Indigenous communities. So the work in this region focuses around the work of the Indigenous church here in Morley and the Indigenous church to our north in Maskwacis. So these are the two historic churches in our region. They are an important measure of how we are making relationship. And so when we bring the land acknowledgement to this area, Treaty Number 6, we also recognize that in Treaty Number 7 we have relationship as well. For me, part of this land is my ancestral land. We come from the Sharphead community, which was dissolved in the 1900s because of smallpox epidemic. And so that wiped out a lot of our community members. A lot of the people died. And the children were moved to various First Nations to grow up, to be adopted into their relations and their kin in other places. Our family, our descendants went to Morley. Others went to Duffield. Others went to Alexis and other places. Cree reserves, Stoney reserves. So we have descendants around Alberta. This is important because the origin of our place here We learned during the Indian Residential School, Industrial School here in Red Deer, was an important event when those bodies were found and the repatriation of those bodies occurred. They had to come to us in Morley, and they had to talk to the family. They had to talk to us about this particular land and our connection and our history in this land. So it becomes a longer narrative around who we are. And so in this space, I welcome you to these lands that were once the homeland of my people. And so we understand how we are related through those commitments. Today we have the commitments of the TRC, of UNDRIP, and of the United Church calls to the church from the elders of the Caretaker Circle, the Indigenous elders. All of these are important parts of the, is this loud? This is getting really loud. It just seems to echo in my ears. Yeah. So as we think about some of these efforts, what I take from this, and hearing some of the speakers earlier on my drive up, I was in Banff doing a Red Dress Day event with our Hawaiian visitors and also with our elders from the Morley Reserve, and also went to have my uncle pass away this past week, and so we are preparing for that funeral and to go tomorrow to go to a wake service at noon. So there's a lot that is going on in our community, and when I think about some of the speakers and what they said, some of the things that resounded to me thinking about that was a question of, in listening to these wonderful speakers, I think, I'd listen and think, I hope that we have changed. I hope that we are changing and continue to change. Change is our hope. Adaptation is a sign of that we are not still in a regressive mode, but that we are moving forward. Otherwise, we will wither and die. And I think that we've seen in Indigenous ministry and in the Indigenous issues that we face, there have been many that turned away from the issues at hand, and we can continue to see them expound. So these efforts at the foster care system, the efforts at the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, the efforts at a lot of the social ills, addictions, and other things that have been wrought upon our communities, very real and very prevalent. And so through the work of this pandemic, I'm hoping that we have learned to change, that we have learned that our systems are not always the best and that we are able to adapt, that we are able to move forward, to find new nourishment, and to embrace difference and temporality and contingency and consensus in order to move ahead. That is the work of this ministry. When we go through the list, and I'll have Alan put up that list, there are events happening throughout the year. There are things that we are reaching out to you and to others across the country, others that have come and been part of our ministry, to share, to learn, to grow, and that's always open to everyone here to be part of. I know we do a great job with the affirming groups, and that is a feather in our cap. We also have to work on some of these efforts with our reconciliation community endeavors. That's a very critical part of being in community together and of learning to share with one another. These efforts help us to ground our understanding of the world and of where we are at, in a hope that we will achieve a balance of working together and of being better citizens and members of a larger United Church family. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, so much for sharing that with us. Pam Rocker is on her way forward to share with us some information from Affirming Connections.
Thank you so much, Tony. One of my favorite memories, I used to work with Tony when we were both working at McDougall United Church in Calgary. And I remember we were having a conversation one day about what proper word to use for Indigenous folks. And I finally was like, well, Tony, what do you think non-Indigenous people should say? And he said, not much. I was like, fair. That said, I'm going to talk for a little bit. I have a few minutes with you. I have about 7 minutes worth of updates to give you around the work that we've been doing as Affirming Connections, and then we have a premiere video to show you of something that we've been working on, so I'm very excited about that. I'm really proud to be the director of Affirming Connections. We are supported by Chinook Winds Region and St. Andrews Regional Ministries, and believe it or not, we're going into our 5th year of ministry, amplifying the voices and actions of affirming people and communities of faith, working alongside political and social movements that seek full inclusion for Two-Spirit and LGBTQ+ communities, and providing faith-based professional development events in these intersections. We also give a lot of support and resources to 2S LGBTQ people and their loved ones who are looking for places to explore their spirituality without being asked to fracture who they are in order to belong. Theologian Damon Garcia says, we must grow from simply squeezing more people into our biases to affirming a spirit that shatters every bias we construct. And that's what Affirming Connections hopes to do. We wonder, what if every sanctuary was truly a sanctuary for everyone? We wonder, what if in our ideas and theology we could offer liberation instead of alienation? And instead of preaching about hell and condemnation, focused on creating heaven, God's kingdom on earth. So why does this matter? Why do we do this? Why, despite being in this work that often, by the dominant narrative religion, I am often invited to leave, not by anybody here, but in general, why does this still matter to me and to so many of us? One reason is because a religious attack requires a religious response. Recent data shows that as many as 1 in 10 gay, bi, trans, and queer men and Two-Spirit and non-binary people in Canada have experienced conversion therapy practices, also known as sexual orientation and gender change efforts, which is coercion to be heterosexual and cisgender. A particular concern, the data shows that 67% experience conversion therapy practices in religious and faith-based settings, and 72% started conversion therapy before the age of 20. There is a high concentration of these practices happening in central and southern Alberta, despite its recent criminalization in January, showing that we need a diversity of strategies not only legally but religiously to eliminate these practices. Think about that number. 67% experienced conversion therapy as part of their faith community. Another reason is that we are missing out on the beautiful presence of so many people who want to openly be part of communities that stand for their values. As Nadia Bolz-Weber says, LGBTQ people are not a topic for the church to debate. We are the church. We are a gift to the church and have the potential to revitalize our faith and faith communities. And without queer folks, I know this gathering would be a lot less colorful and a lot less good looking, okay? I want to tell you a little bit about the past few years of our work. Friends, this is so exciting, okay? One day, I was talking to the communications person from Affirm United, and I said, why isn't there a National Affirming Day? And she said, good question. And I said, we're gonna invent it. So we did. So we invented National Affirming/Pi Day in 2019. And Pi, as many of you have said, which makes me so happy, stands for Public, Intentional, and Explicit. And this evolved as a teaching tool that we used to use and that we still use to say, people say, what does affirming mean? And then we'd say, well, what can that look and feel like in your community? What are you doing that is public, intentional, and explicit, that is showing your faith in action? And so it's every year on March 14th, 3.14, Pi Day. I love that groan. My teenage sons give it to me all the time. Somebody said that we were oppressing math by taking over 3.14, but I think it'll be okay. True. So we encourage everyone nationwide to celebrate Pi. Every year on March 14th, we've produced videos about Pi Day. We have lots of stickers and paraphernalia downstairs on our table, so feel free to avail yourselves of that and take it back to your community so you can spread the good Pi news and start conversations about what it means for you. We also produced the What the Hell video that explores and demystifies the concept of hell through 19 interviews with faith and community leaders across the country. When someone asked me 5 years ago when we first started Affirming Connections, why does this work, why is it still needed, if you had to say it in one word? And the word that came to mind was hell, because that's the most powerful marketing tool that folks who do not believe LGBTQ people can be included in the love of God use, still today. And at least once a week, I have a conversation with an individual or a family member who wonders whether that's the place they're destined to be sent. So I wanted to ask folks, what were you taught about this? What do you think about it now? What would you tell somebody who feels like that's a place that they belong? And it is an awesome video, and I encourage you to watch it. You can visit whatthehell.ca. We also produce citywide Pride every year with 35 other faith communities on Pride Sunday. We also host Affirming Leaders Day, which is coming up on its 4th year. And I will be giving you a postcard on your table. And I believe there's our citywide Pride. And you will see on your table Affirming Leaders Day, and you will get a special promo code also for you online. If you use the promo code Chinook, you can get 25% off any ticket. And if anybody in your community is interested in coming and has any barriers whatsoever, we will make it happen for them to be in attendance. We also have been really honored to be a part of banning conversion therapy in Calgary on a municipal level, bringing the strongest wording, the strongest law in any municipality in North America in 2020. And also helping lots of different folks figure out what that looks like in their own municipalities and advocating for this on a federal level as well. And over the years, we've had hundreds of conversations with folks who have been victims of conversion therapy. And we've been able to tell them about lots of different communities they can be a part of. We have interesting conversations every day, from a transgender trucker looking for a place in Alberta to worship as they drive through, to a young teen in a small town in rural Alberta who was wondering whether or not they would be okay. Find our What the Hell video somehow, some way on our website, and it completely transformed what they felt like they deserved. If you want to connect with us, I love that question. Why would you call me? Well, if you're wondering, what does it mean to be affirming? We're really struggling to have these conversations. We don't know how to have it, or we're hitting roadblocks in these things. Or I'm struggling to understand it. Or I wonder if my cousin or my daughter or whatever is going through something, are there any resources out there? How could you possibly help? Please, if you wonder whether maybe you could contact me about something, please do. And if I can't help you, I will find somebody who can. You're not alone. We have a website with a lot of great resources on it. You can find affirming ministries across not only Alberta, but also across the country. You'll see our upcoming events. We have a very active social media presence on Instagram and Facebook, as well as a YouTube channel that has our self-produced videos and other curated lists if you're thinking, man, our affirming process has kind of, needs to be revitalized and maybe we could show something. You'll find a lot of great ideas there. We also created the official piday.ca website. I was so surprised that it wasn't taken over, so I grabbed it up, piday.ca. And so you can look at that for any resources that you might ever want. You can also visit our table downstairs for not just Pi Day stuff, but a lot of different things and information about book and film recommendations, my contact information, and the best thing you can do is get on our e-newsletter list that goes out once a week, and it'll tell you all the latest about what's going on. And if you have an affirming event or something to share, send it to me, and we will be happy to amplify that. Last but not least, I want to show you part of the latest exciting project that we've been working on. And this is a series called Small Town, Big Impact, Stories and Strategies from the Affirming Journey. We did a Chinook Winds Affirming Survey in 2021, and we analyzed the data from that about what folks wanted and used it as a guideline for the next thing we were going to create. So in response to your responses, we created a 3-video series exploring affirming and what this can look like specifically for smaller cities and communities or places where the political landscape can be quite non-affirming. And our hope is that this series will fill in some gaps that have been leaving many cities out of the conversation around affirming efforts. We know that one-size-fits-all solution doesn't exist, and unfortunately, more highly populated and visible communities often get the most attention. But it really matters that there are safer spaces in smaller communities. And so it's clear that a more targeted approach to the unique challenges faced in smaller cities and the Chinook Winds region is required, and we want to be part of that because no one should feel like they're alone. So this video series has 3 videos. One that's focused on getting started, one on roadblocks, and one on affirming in action. How has this impacted and benefited our community? So you can see the premiere of all 3 videos next week at Affirming Leaders Day, May 14th. And an accompanying discussion guide will also be released. Videos will then be available on YouTube that you can use freely for whatever affirming purpose that you would like, and you can screen them for free, obviously. So now you get to be the first audience ever, other than me and our production assistant and our editor, to see the very first video in our series. You'll see a lot of really amazing faces that are in this room as well. I was telling a couple of folks that I met for the first time that I've seen their face for dozens of hours in the last month editing these videos that I feel like they're super famous. But I think you're going to think the same. So thank you so much for all of your support, for everything you do that sometimes goes unseen, that actually transforms and saves lives. So without further ado, here is Getting Started, part of our Small Town, Big Impact series.
Idea or a new thought or a new voice can offer, and for people who are looking and are in the dark trying to figure out what this is that they're feeling or what this turmoil is, for it to be affirmed and given value, well, then you're giving purpose. And you don't even know sometimes that you're doing that until you do it.
The journey into the decision to become an affirming congregation kind of started or was triggered in 2016 with the Orlando nightclub shooting. And it was the heightened awareness of no safe space, or no space is safe, and motivation to ensure a safe space for all. It brought to question, is our church a safe space?
My congregation actually approached me about becoming affirming. And I'm like, wow, yeah. For congregational members to come to me and say, can you look into what it would be for us to be affirming? As opposed to the minister saying, hey, I think we should be, what do you think of this? It was a big step forward for us.
What we had intended to do is take the booklet we created and go to each group and very clearly explain things to them so that we had buy-in that way. We didn't anticipate having a problem passing the motion. We felt that the community would vote to be affirming. We just wanted to do the process well. We wanted to make sure we covered the difference between being welcoming and affirming and so on. We felt we wanted to do that in groups live, so we had the opportunity for questions.
We decided that each Sunday for about 6 weeks, we would interview a different person from the LGBTQ plus community and have them share their experiences with us as part of our worship service, so that people were hearing from a direct source what kinds of things were happening and had happened in the past.
I think one of the best things that someone said to me was, we all need to worship, right? And so we have to create space for each other. And it's in that spirit that we're able to move forward.
I think trying to go at a slower pace, to really take time to have conversation with people, to encourage people to engage in the conversation.
The process itself was about lots of little interactions to help us make sense of the environment and help us know how we all felt about it, and how we could question and be free to explore answers and wonder together.
There were very few moments where we kind of sprung things on people and they kind of went, oh, that happened. It was more, we led people into it happening so that when it did happen, they were happy with it.
People engage in different ways. Some show up and attend things and join the dialogue, and others engage more on the sidelines and have conversations in other spaces with each other. So I think it was just the time of intention to encourage the dialogue and encourage people to get to the point of readiness to decide and vote on it as a collective body.
Through conversations and through some work that has been done, that a lot of people have started to understand and see what being affirming really means. That it's not just, okay, you're welcome here, as much as it is, this is your space too, and that we're sharing this space.
And people who feel that they belong, people who feel that they're important, that they're valued, just makes everything better for all of us. Why wouldn't all of us want that? Because it just makes for a healthier society, a healthier community, a healthier country.
Don't dismiss it. Don't determine in your mind right away what people are going to think. Because if I had just sort of looked at the, say, the political landscape here and thought, oh, well, this is never going to fly, I might not have even tried. But it's that be open to what the Spirit can do, because there are no limits in that sense.
If it encourages one person to feel that they are supported and can be supported, it is totally worth it. If it encourages a few people in a community of faith who are of like mind to take the first step, totally worth it.
giving people an opportunity to be generous always reaps benefit, because if we assume that our people are narrow-minded because they're elderly, we do a great disservice to the elderly. If we assume that we're going to get a lot of pushback about this, or no one's going to want to do this, we defeat the process before we begin. So the most important thing to do is to be your authentic self. Step forward, even if you're afraid, but knowing that what you're doing is coming from a genuine place of fellowship and love, then anything is possible.
Thank you so much. And Reverend Lynn and Sherry are here, who are a couple of the stars of our video series. Our roadblock video is about 10 minutes long, and our Affirming in Action video is 15 minutes long. And these are going to come out in a couple of weeks, like I said. So even though we focused on smaller communities, it's relevant to probably any conversation we have around being affirming. And I'm just so thankful to be in this role at this moment in time, because there is so much hope in the work that we have to do. So please talk to me if I can help support you in any way. And thank you so much to the folks who gave their time to make this series possible.
Thank you so very much, Pam. A couple of years ago, I had a question of how to manage a situation, and I felt like Pam was the person to call. And I was right, and Pam very graciously gave me her time and helped me sort through the situation. So she's she's a great resource. So if, like she said, if it enters your mind that you should call Pam, maybe you should, and have a chat with her. Thank you, Pam, for telling us about the good work that Affirming Connections is doing. Alan, could we have the second video of our second person that's retiring this year, please?
My name is Ray Goodship, and I graduated from Queen's Theological College in 2003 and ordained in Sudbury, Ontario that same year from Manitou Conference. Our three sons laid hands on me at my ordination. Bob and Jason and Alex, they were three teenage boys who had been a big part of that journey. They had sacrificed much, and I think they had grown a great deal in their faith as well. And so it was just so touching and moving for me, and important that they be the ones to lay hands on me. So, yeah. So I served in Bentley Blackfalds Pastoral Charge. That was my settlement charge for 7 years. And they were amazing people. I learned so much there. I spent a couple of years at Sunnybrook United Church in Red Deer, and alongside Linda Irvin, and that was, I got to do all the fun stuff, you know, men's ministry and all that kind of stuff, and she got stuck doing all the tough work. So it was a great experience there, and learned a lot. And then I've been here at St. Andrew's United Church in Cochrane for 10 years. And this has really been the place where I feel like ministry became what I had always dreamed it could be, or had expected it to be. And so I'm so grateful to these folks for sharing their ministry with me these past 10 years. So in what ways have I experienced United Church being a place for all? And that's a great question, because I've always felt a little bit outside the church in some ways, and yet I've always felt welcomed here as well. So grew up in Northern Ontario, very blue collar upbringing, context, raised Catholic. And so I spent most of my time outside of school, either in hockey rinks and dressing rooms, or on the job site. My dad and my uncle and my grandfather, all three of them were bricklayers, and I became a bricklayer as well in my early 20s, and did that for 20 years. And so, that was my context. It was pretty coarse context in some ways. The air was always blue with cursing and filled with all the isms that we've learned to extinguish or at least put aside in our lives. And so that's my context and what I grew up with. And so around 1988, when our first son was about a year old, we went to a United Church, Emmanuel United Church in North Bay, to have him done, to have him baptized. And it was right in the middle of the issue. Sexual orientation for ordination as a barrier. And so, and they were knee deep in that conflict. And yet, people on either side of the issue were still sitting in the pews with each other. Some people left, of course, but most people stayed, and most people hashed it out together. And it really kind of reminded me of a family arguing around the dinner table, and it could get quite heated, but it's still family, it's still home, and it's still where you belong, and you just stick it out and you hash it out, and that's what they did. And so, oddly enough, that attracted us, and we engaged in that church. And by the mid-90s, one of those key leaders who were opposed to sexual felt that sexual orientation was a barrier to ordination. He told me by that point that he had been wrong, and that he was trying to reconcile with those that he had hurt. And I don't think there's anything more we can ask of our faith than that. To journey together as we grow and learn and mature. Bruce Coburn, in one of his songs, calls us fellow stumblers along the way, and I'm a stumbler, and I have these wonderful folks to stumble along with. And so, we want to do better, and we want to understand, but we probably don't, and maybe never will. We want to make space for others to be with us, amongst us, but we're kind of awkward about it, and we don't know if we're doing it right, or if we're saying the right things, and probably we're not, but still we do our best, and we grow, and we learn, and we stumble along, and there's times when we really are the body of Christ, but we always want to be, and to me, that's what makes the United Church in particular so important, is that it has not only room for everyone who's different from us, but it also has a place for me in my ignorance, and in my uncertainty, and in my awkwardness, and that's a blessing.
We give great thanks for Ray's leadership and ministry over the years. I don't believe he's in the court at this time, but we give him thanks. I have a couple of announcements to make before we say grace. There is the affirm statement has been printed out, affirm statement and motion. They're available at the registration table just at the door there. Also, during the offering, I believe it's the worship service that's taking place as when we return, there's going to be an offering taken. If you so wish to give any loose change that you have, or I'm sure they would accept any bill size that you want to throw in there. The proceeds are going to the Safe Harbor Society, that the children's program, and I believe the youth are working towards over these few days together. They're putting together packages. And so Chris Mapoy wanted me to give you a heads up that there will be an offering taken at the 7 o'clock worship service. So we're going to have a grace time. And I got kicked out of choir when I was in grade 2, community choir. I got sent back home with my check. So I'm musically adjacent. I like to sing. I can't promise I'm going to be in tune. So all y'all are going to need to help me a little bit. I invite you to stand, rise as you are able. Alan, I'm going to use this mic. I feel very brave. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm feeling a little brave. Okay, I'm willing to be vulnerable. Now I didn't grow up going to church. And when I entered into my spouse's family, they taught me this grace. Now, it's COVID time, so we're not going to hold hands, but the rule is you're supposed to hold hands. And the tune is Frère Jacques, okay? So I think we can do this. So here we are, once again. We do ask your blessing, amen, amen. So I'm going to stand back, and we're going to start, okay? Here we are, once again, we do ask your blessing, amen, amen. One more time. Here we are, once again, we do ask your blessing, Awesome. Worship leaders are supposed to, Cameron, worship leaders are supposed to meet here for practice, as per Susan. 6:45, we're returning.